Hello, friends. Good evening. Welcome to Monk Chat with, 3 out of the 4 monastics here at Empty Cloud Monastery. So tonight we have Bhante Sudaso here on my right. I am Aya Soma. And to my left, we have Venerable Dang Dai Ming, who is currently visiting from California and is ordained in the Mahayana tradition, hence the different robe for those who are wondering. So welcome to all our friends, Belinda, Gita, Kumu, Zach, Kauser friend, Alexandra, Denise, Venerable Vimalanyani, good to see you online again. Hello, Yudi, Adine, Mary, our neighbor, great. And Miguel from Chile, wonderful. Hello to also Robin, great. I see that there's already questions popping up on the live chat, so let's start without further ado. And we have also Bhante Sumana, who will be managing the Instagram live for extra questions that will be popping up. But let's start with Zach, who says, if my bed is not really very tall and not very fancy, is it still breaking the 8th precept because it is my usual bed? How high are your beds? Anyone wants to volunteer to take
I
this
sleep
question?
on the floor. So nice cushion on the floor. If you can do that, you will appreciate it in time because it's good for your back. Like the Japanese tend to sleep on hard surfaces. After a while, once you adjust to it, it's better for your spinal column. So you can try that out. But I don't know the exact measurements for the high, luxurious bed. Maybe Bhante Sudaso knows that.
I mean, if you want to go by the Vinaya, then I think the limit is 8 inches off the ground or so. Though there's debates on exactly what the right measurement is. But similarly to Brother Diamond, I just have a mattress on the floor. It's much easier. But coming to your question, the point is about having excessively luxurious bedding. So if you just have a simple mattress with a simple blanket and a simple pillow, then that's fine. Just not getting into unnecessary complexities and luxuries.
Great, thank you, Bhante, and thank you, other Bhante. And Kumu asks, could you please explain Silabhatta Paramasa? How is this different from a Misa Puja, like offering flowers, lighting lamps, etc.? Well, I'll offer what comes to mind. And mainly it boils down to intention. So why are you doing the things that you're doing? And also, what do you think those things will ultimately do for you? So if you are, offering, for example, flowers to the Buddha, offering any type of offering really to Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, with that sense of appreciation, with that sense of gratitude, with that sense of generosity, and with a sense of developing wholesome qualities of mind, well, that is practicing the Dhamma. So it's improving, just becoming a better person altogether, more and more similar to the Buddha. But if you think that just by offering flowers or just by even offering a meal to the Sangha with the idea that in this way, by doing this action, you'll sort of purify your mind without actually making actions through body, speech, and mind that are actually purifying your conduct. So for example, if you start killing sentient beings every day, and then you're like, okay, well, I kill sentient beings, but then I offer flowers to the Buddha statue, hoping that will kind of cancel your sort of sins, so to speak, then that is Silabhatta Paramasa. So it's not something, you're doing rites and rituals that are not really doing good things. So you'll see it's actually prevalent in a lot of spiritual practices that are not Buddhist. So for example, there is a practice, an unfortunate practice actually, that some people do in New York City every year, which is slaughtering chickens on the street And the idea is that they do a ritual beforehand where they are transferring the sins. These people who do this ritual, they are transferring their sins to the chicken and then slaughtering the chicken with the idea that the chicken then the slaughtered chicken will die with their sins. So that's an example of rite and rituals that actually don't bring purity, don't lead to purity, but rather actually lead to even more bad karma. So you think you are eliminating your sins, but in reality, you're racking up more and more sins. And there's lots of like self-torture, without actually going to harm other sentient beings. Sometimes we're very skillful at torturing this sentient being. So there's practices of, I don't know how you call it in English, but in some actually branches of extreme Catholicism, they do, self-flagellation could be one of them, but also like putting this kind of thing with spines and needles that like when you move, it like gets into your skin and you're suffering and you're in pain. And it's like a whole self-torture with the idea that that will bring some benefit. Well, that, according to the Buddhist view, is not particularly beneficial, but actually quite the opposite. It creates unwholesome mind states. Anything else?
No.
No? All right. And Kazur friend asks, any opinions on the Abhidhamma Pitaka? Is it good to study it, Bhante Sudasa?
So to be perfectly honest, I recommend just reading the suttas and reading the suttas over and over again. There's already more than enough material in the suttas to bring you all the way to full enlightenment. So it's not really necessary to study the Abhidhamma. The Abhidhamma is also a bit of a peculiar collection of documents. It's almost certainly produced hundreds of years after the Buddha, and most of it is of uncertain authorship. So we don't really know where it comes from. There's also several different versions of the Abhidhamma that have been preserved. The Pali Abhidhamma is only one, and the other Abhidhamma versions are quite dramatically different in many ways. So I'm quite hesitant to recommend the Abhidhamma per se, except as something fun and Buddhism inspired that is still pretty wholesome, actually. I studied Abhidhamma for a few months at one point to get some understanding of what it is. And it's interesting, but you need to be careful because it also can lead into over abstraction of the Dhamma. The suttas are very grounded. They're very real. They're very much everyday life kind of things. The Abhidhamma represented an attempt by later scholars to abstract the Dhamma from the suttas. And the problem is that the more you abstract something, the less relevant it is to everyday life. So the Dhamma has to be lived. So it's fine to study the Abhidhamma if you want to, as long as you're always relating it to the suttas and to your everyday life. But otherwise, just stick to the suttas. It's much easier.
Thank you, Bhante. And Denise is asking, what exactly is a wheel-turning monarch? And why is there a sutra that says women cannot be such monarchs?
Oh, interesting. The sutra saying that women can't be a monarch. I don't agree with that. And so, wheel-turning monarch, kings that espouse the Dhamma, correct? Aren't they Siddhasa? You had them in Vietnam. You had great kings in Tibet and in India and in Sri Lanka and in Thailand and many Buddhist lands, kings who were wealthy, but they also spent a lot of time teaching the Dhamma, supporting the Sangha, conventional Sangha of monks and nuns. And that's the wheel-turning monarch.
Yeah, and there is a sutra which does contain the statement that women cannot be wheel-turning monarchs, but contemporary scholars believe that that's a later corruption that was added later to the text by people not so friendly to women. So it's unfortunate, but there are a few little things like that that have worked their way into the Buddhist texts.
yeah, there's been a few editors here and there who are like, well, wow, this teaching cannot be true. Like, it cannot be possible that women have the same capabilities of awakening. Because, like, truly, Buddhism that I'm aware of is the only spiritual tradition that, since at least we have record of, that actually makes a statement that females are humans just as males, and actually that there is no difference, and on top of that have the same capabilities for awakening. So then throughout the years, unenlightened people were like, clearly there must have been a mistake of a transmission, let me correct this. Let me edit it. So we have some unfortunate fragments here and there, but it's just it's very few that are in contradiction with the rest of the Dhamma. So we sometimes pay too much attention to these fragments and very little attention to the rest of the suttas. So it's kind of like if the Buddha says, the sky is blue, 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 the sky is pink, the sky is blue, and everybody's like, oh, the sky is pink. The Buddha said the sky is pink. Look at this sutta. It says the sky is pink. And you're like, but wait, in the rest, the sky is blue. So let's focus on the sky is blue. And Joy says, is everything that happens in our lives based on past karma? Well, Bhante Sudhaso actually gave an excellent talk on that. So you can find it on our YouTube channel. We should probably create playlists. Actually, PSA, if there is a volunteer here that wants to work on the YouTube channel, send us an email at info@emptycloud.org, and you can create all these nice little playlists. So it's easier for people to search these topics. But in short, I would say yes and no, in the sense that whatever we're experiencing in this moment this is my understanding anyway, is past karma, and we have the ability, actually it's not past karma, it's vipaka, so it's the result of past karma, so the result of actions that we've made in the past, and in every moment we can make new actions, so new karma that then will have results in the future. So when we are an uninstructed worldling, we actually tend to cultivate strong habits in a very unaware sort of state of mind. So then actually it's very easy to predict sort of the future of someone who does not have the Dhamma, because they are repeating the same thing over and over again, creating such a strong habit that there's almost the sense of predestination, It's kind of like if you paint every day, then there's probably, strong sort of tendency that will most likely turn you into an artist rather than, an investment banker. Odds are, right? Because you're doing the same thing over and over again. Or similarly, if your mind gravitates naturally towards math and you keep on cultivating math, then it's very unlikely that you're going to decide to be, a sort of fashion photographer in life. So in that sense, we're kind of constantly sort of experiencing past karma, but it's also true that then you can actually, once you become aware of the actions and the consequences, you can make radically different choices that then will radically shift your experience of reality. Getting actually back to the example, one of my best friends from my previous life within this life, so before Buddhism, she was actually someone with lots of masters in foreign politics, working for the UN, going to missions in Uganda, etc. And then all of a sudden, she was like, I'm going to be a fashion photographer. Bam. And her life radically changed overnight. So yeah. So she still has influences. Actually, her work still has, she'll do fashion, shoots for, Vogue magazine, which will be influenced actually by the work that she's done for the UN, but it's still like different work. So she's still receiving, you can say, the sort of results of her past karma, but it has a entirely different shape and form than it would have if she had persisted in that path. Hope that answers your question.
So we have a question on Instagram Live. The question is being a Buddhist a requirement to become a Buddha?
This doesn't.
Of course.
Yes, obviously.
How could it not? So, I mean, I suppose if you want to play word games and play with the definition of Buddhist, then you could do that if you want to. But ultimately, Buddhist just means a person who is committed to awakening, a person who is committed to becoming a Buddha. So that means every single person who wants to become awakened must necessarily be a Buddhist who's practicing Buddhism. And these days, you'll sometimes hear people say silly things like Buddhism is a term invented by modern Westerners, but that's ridiculous. We've been talking about Buddhism since the time of the Buddha. So the term Buddha Sasana is the Pali word that basically translates as Buddhism. We've been using that forever. And the Buddha himself, he said that he didn't invent anything new. He just rediscovered the same teachings that every Buddha in the past had taught. He was just following the same path that every other Buddha had ever followed. And when you get into the Mahayana literature, it goes into great detail in talking about how in the Buddha's many past lives, he received a lot of teachings and instructions from other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas up until his final life when they left him on his own to figure out the last few steps on him by himself. So yeah, the Buddha was most definitely a Buddhist. Whether he would have called himself that specifically is really beside the point, because his quest was awakening. Therefore, he was a Buddhist.
Great, thank you. And Yuri says, where's my spot in the line? There is no room for me in the picture. Yes, there is. You can actually replace the Buddha once you'll become enlightened, like the Buddha, future female Buddha. We can put you right there. And hello to Jessie and Bodhi Bite. And Gita says, Ayasoma, how is Stan? What really happened to him? Glad to have heard that he's better now. Oh, thank you for asking. He's actually significantly better. Unfortunately, he had a little problem exactly a month ago. He went to a vet that was not particularly careful and messed up his organs. So he had internal bleeding and was about to die. So we did a lot of contemplation of sickness and death, but he discovered his 10th life. So he miraculously came back from the dead thanks to our vet here next door from West Orange Animal Hospital. Shout out to Dr. Boone, who saved the little kitty. And so now he's doing well. He's bombarded with medicine, but he's slowly but surely getting back to health. So hopefully that will be a little bit less impermanent, less impermanent. And hello, Manuel, who says, God evening, Venerables. Thank you for the God evening. We like godly evenings. And Jessie says, I had a question on the use of mantras like Buddha. Best as a primary object of meditation, or can I use it as a background stream that keeps my focus on the breath or nada? And where do you use it?
If you want good samadhi, no. As Bhante G says, no verbalization. We Westerners have too much mental commentary as it is. So I would recommend, if you use it, just use it as an exercise outside of meditation. Similar to counting the breath. I've been thinking about this the last few days, how to harmonize different views. Some well-respected teachers and meditators say use Buddha, use some other mantra, count the breath. Then some, like Bhante G said, no verbalization at all. Sit down, establish mindfulness, don't move, and move through samadhis until the jhanas. Outside of meditation, use it as an exercise to calm your mind. Sometimes when I'm doing walking meditation, the right foot, boot, left foot, do, boot, do, Buddha. But then drop it. Get into the habit of just not needing it at all. Go straight to awareness if possible.
Great. And thank you, Venerable. And hello to Jens and Brian. Good to see you. Long time no see. Whoops. And Adin says, this week we study Majjhima Nikaya 75, where the Buddha advises us to associate with good people. My friends are not at all evil, but their worldview revolves around sensuality, not helpful. What am I to do? Well, I would say that, at a certain point in your life, you need to make choices. And if you feel like that your friends, your current circle of friends, is not particularly supportive to your spiritual practice, then if your spiritual practice is the foremost, then you need to surround yourself with other friends who also have spiritual practice as the foremost thing in their life. And that doesn't mean that you have to abandon all your friends from your previous life within your life, as I like to say, in the sense of not necessarily, okay, now I'm not going to see any non-Buddhists or ever talk to them. Oh, you're going to go to hell as if brought there. No, we're not saying that. But there has to be some sort of shift in order for your practice to go further. And so that's the importance of the Sangha, and also the importance of having, wherever you go locally, having a physical space, group of people. So this has been my experience personally, that then, well, I'm a little bit extreme, so then I decided to, get more extreme spiritual friends, all with robes, all taking lots of precepts, etc. So it doesn't have to go, you don't necessarily have to become a full-on monastic. But when I was a lay person and I started, practicing Buddhism very intensively, I had to face the inevitability that it was very difficult to hang out with my non-Buddhist friends on a regular basis as I used to do before. Well, first of all, because I stopped drinking, and actually not drinking surrounded by people who are drunk. Well, one, was not fun. Two, it was a big waste of time. Three, actually, it's kind of, why are you doing the things that you're doing? It's kind of an obstacle actually to the practice. So you start taking precepts, which means you're less interested in doing certain things. And perhaps less is more. Then you start seeing your friends that you love a little bit less, but giving them more quality time where you're not, just doing a bunch of small talk and watching them drink and watching them do whatever your friends are into doing. I mean, I used to be a Greek type, so all my friends are Greek types, and they're not really interested in renunciation. Not the current ones, the previous ones. The venerables here are pretty good at renunciation. So yeah, it was a slow transition. I was like, okay, well, maybe let's meet during the day and let's have tea, or let's meet for brunch and not have mimosa and do other things together. And that's actually still the case, also since I ordained, I still am in touch with some of my friends, but on a less frequent basis, and it's okay. And you're surrounded by other people who are supporting you in the spiritual practice. You have in common the most important thing, which is the Dhamma. So none of the venerables here could care less about the things that I like, quote unquote. We don't like the same artist. Well, for starters, Bhante Sutta doesn't like art in general.
That's not quite true.
Well, what I consider as art anyway. We have radically different. When I first met him, I was shocked because that used to be my religion as a lay person. I was secular scientific materialist, so the art world was my religion. Literature was my religion, and he was like Yeah, he was not interested in any of that. And I was shocked because I was like, how is it possible? It's kind of like, you don't believe in God. This is all there is in life. So we had to, actually, we developed a different type of friendship that is based actually on the Dhamma. That is what we have in common. And that is actually why, living together works. Similarly with, Bhante Sumano and with Venerable Dangda, and actually all of the people that constantly come here as residents, visitors, anagarikas, future monastics. As lay people, we would have zero in common. We would probably not even talk to each other. Well, maybe I'm exaggerating, but do you see what I mean? What I'm getting at? Like, we're here for the Dhamma, and that is extremely fruitful and pushes us forward.
So on Instagram, Nancy has a question. Nancy says, I take long inhalations and exhalations. When I am in guided meditations, my breath work is always a lot longer than the queuing. Is this something that I should worry about or change it? Is it neutral?
It's always longer.
So,
could you repeat her question?
Mm-hmm. When I'm in guided meditations, my breath work is always a lot longer than the prompting, the breathing in long, breathing out long. Is this something I should worry about or change? Is it neutral? Like, does it even matter?
And Bhante Siddhasa felt inspired too.
Well, it sounds to me like you're controlling your breathing. And in most Buddhist meditation, the recommendation is to allow your breath to happen naturally at its own speed. So we're not trying to control our breathing. If you're doing mindfulness of breathing, the practice is just to observe it, but not to control it. So whether your breath is long or short doesn't matter. Whether it's deep or shallow doesn't matter. That's relevant in some non-Buddhist practices, but it is not relevant in Buddhist practice. The only exceptions I know are a couple of very specific esoteric Tibetan Buddhist meditation techniques, which involve breath regulation. But even in Tibetan Buddhism, most of what they do does not involve breath regulation. So I would actually recommend stop controlling your breathing. Just observe it. That's what I would say. And it doesn't matter if your breath is longer or slower than the guided instructions. It doesn't matter. Guided meditation is not to be relied upon anyway. It's just something to use once in a while when you want to learn something new. But you should be doing most of your meditation without guidance, which also I think is the next question here.
Yes, but I don't know if it's exactly a question. I would like to ask about guided meditation in reference to help to contemplating the body as place and object.
I'm not exactly sure what's being said here, but I would just reiterate once again, guided meditation is for learning a new technique, but it should not be what you normally do. Don't use guided meditation all the time. Maybe 1 out of every 5 or 10 meditations, it's fine, but not all the time.
I concur.
All right. And Alexandra asks, what is it exactly that is getting reborn from life to life? A soul? A self? Venerable?
This question comes up in the sutras all the time. Very common question. That's mystery. But for sure, it's not a solid self. And how do we know that? Because in this very moment, feelings are changing, sensations are changing, thought forms are changing, the body is changing, gray hairs are appearing here in this beard. So what is there that's solid that can be passed on to the next life? But clearly there's some type of continuum, some type of mechanism for latent tendencies. And that's why you get, but we won't get too deep into that in the Abhidhamma, bhavanga, or in Mahayana, alara consciousness, store consciousness. But that's getting into philosophy and psychology. So can't be said exactly what goes on to the next life, but there's some imprint, something is carried, some memories, but it's definitely not a solid self-existing from its own point of view, independent of other causes or forces and factors.
And just to add on to that, I would also say that it can be helpful also to think of it in terms of what goes from day to day, what goes from moment to moment. So we get so caught up in this mystery of what goes from one life to the next, but we're actually missing the fact that exactly the same process is happening all the time in our lives. And in every moment, what are we doing? We're creating conditions for the next moment. That's all. So nothing goes from moment to moment, but rather the conditions of one moment shape the circumstances of the next moment. The choices we make in one moment shape what circumstances are in the next moment. So there's nothing that goes from moment to moment. This is one way of looking at it. Nothing goes from moment to moment, but there is a causal continuity, as Venerable Diamond was saying. So whether we're talking moment to moment or day to day or life to life, it's all the same. It's all the same.
Great. Thank you, Bantes. And Lucas says, the whole coronavirus pandemic has brought me a bit of skepticism towards the karmic law in the sense that everybody has been affected by that. Has everyone committed bad previous actions since we all have experienced a degree of suffering because of that? Well, those are two questions. So has everyone committed bad previous actions? Yes, otherwise we wouldn't be humans, by the way. So this idea that only certain people have committed bad actions and some people, some others have not, it's completely odd, bizarre. Actually, we should just like scrap it. So the state of being a human is actually good karma. But by the way, good and bad are all these sort of connotations that we are putting. Like the Buddha actually does not talk in that sense. He doesn't say, oh, look at that person, he's got such good karma, and the other person bad karma and whatnot. But rather the Buddha talks about causality. So for example, we tend to think about karma as this like sort of mystical, whatever, supernatural law that is so different from the physical world. That's why it becomes matter of belief or not belief. But in reality, it's actually a natural law. So it's not personal. It's not something that there's not a divine being that is punishing people because they've done bad things or good things based on what the divine being says that this is good and this is bad. But rather, it's a natural law. So for example, right now we're experiencing climate change. Are we saying that the law of physics, we're actually like losing faith in physics and chemistry and science in general? Well, actually, there are some people that are doing that, but they didn't have faith, quote unquote, to begin with, because they approach it as a matter of faith. But rather, we understand when it comes to climate change that our actions have consequences, right? So that if we, for example, use the dryer for every single thing as they do in this country, which is insane. Like, oh, there is a little towel, let me put it in the dryer, boom, this thing that in an hour and a half, This country, when I first moved to the United States, I was mind blown. First of all, I met the dryer, which is a thing that I had never seen in Italy ever growing up. Whether they were poor, rich, middle class, it just does not exist. And we have all the different seasons. So dryer for everything, for multiple hours, giant houses, giant cars, no regulations for this and that. Like it's incredible. Plastic everything, disposable. I used to work in fashion, one of the most polluting industries in the world. And I was working in fashion when it was, the heyday of fast fashion. So encouraging this disposable attitude. I remember when actually it first started that I was so excited about it. Oh, that was so great. Every week I can have a different teacher every day. So yeah, we understand in hindsight how all those actions multiplied by billions of people have created these consequences, right? So karma is no different. It's no different than the physical laws. It's just that it's mental laws, which, by the way, for Buddhist practice, and from the Buddhist perspective, everything is mental. So also the physical law, there's not much difference. Is we tend to kind of create this sort of separation. So yeah, in other words, I would say that it's quite the opposite. Right? Instead of creating skepticism, one understands. This is actually another highlight of how important it is to understand that our actions have consequences. And they have consequences for ourselves and others and for the planet at large. And to really actually take it as if you're on the camp of like, oh, I don't believe in karma, or I don't know, maybe I can't prove it, etc. How about you take it as a working hypothesis for a year and see how it transforms your mind, how you relate differently to what you're doing, to what you're cultivating, and notice at the effects, very important, that it has on your mind. So, for example, when you're following a precept, like not killing, instead of thinking of it as, just some sort of superstitious thing that you're doing, or I don't know, because you read it in a book or your Dhamma teacher told you or whatever it is, you start noticing how it affects your mind. And how by abstaining from harming, you're creating what we call good karma, which is basically fundamentally wholesome states of existence for yourself and others. So it's a more pleasant state of being. And then whenever you indulge in unwholesome actions, well, it's a very uncomfortable state of being without having to wait for future lives or whatever you think, this sort of mystical thing. No, you can see it right here, right now. Every action has a consequence. And also you're going to start attracting certain people towards you. The more your conduct is pure, the more you'll want to surround yourself with people who are committed to purity. I've never been around with such pure people than I have right now as a monastic, right? It just comes with, that's karma. It's instant karma, fundamentally.
And on Instagram, we have a question. How to handle your emotions, be it either anger or excitement at the moment it comes?
Strong mindfulness. That's how you do it. But practically speaking, how do I do it? So I'll answer from personal experience, because then that's true and from the heart. Well, first, establishing mindfulness of the body is the good base, because it's not easy to jump right into seeing a thought when it arises, watching as it persists, and then as it disbands or evaporates. But if you can do that, that's great. Just see it. And as one monk at another temple where I abided for a while, he used to say things like, look but don't think, eat but don't think, walk but don't think. And he would have this big smile on his face. And it's really simple and funny, but that's it. If you could just see and don't think. When emotions come, just be aware, but don't think. Awareness without thinking. Yes, that is a thing. We're just so used to always running along with every thought that pops up in the mind, or identifying with every emotion as this is mine. We own it. This is not to downplay or deny an experience, no matter how blissful or how painful, but to realize this is not me. There's actually a witnessing. So first, learn how to abide as just the witnessing presence. Just witness, just see, just hear. Back to the basics in the Pali Canon and all the different sutras we hear. Walking in the Kaya Gatasati Sutta. Just walking in the walking, let there just be walking. In the scene, let there just be the scene. In the arising of the emotion, let there just be the arising of the emotion, the persisting of the emotion, and the disbanding of the emotion. Yes, this is possible. But first, you start with basic things like mindfulness of the body, aware of the breath as it arises and ceases, as it's short and long, deep and shallow, and so on. And move on from there to feeling tones, sensations in the body, and emotions, always coupled with thoughts. They all come as a bundle. This dukkha khanda, this heat, this mass of stress and suffering. That's all I have to say. Anyone else?
Great, thank you, Bhante. And Ray Vegan asks, why does the Buddhist community in all lineages does not adhere to a completely vegan diet for the excruciating slaughter of roughly 3 trillion animals per year as forbidden by the Buddha himself?
Well, first off, I appreciate your wish to reduce the harm and suffering to animals. So in Buddhism, we do acknowledge that animals are sentient beings, just like humans. And in fact, we've all been animals of various kinds countless times. So of course, we want to try to make choices and decisions that will cause the least harm to sentient beings and bring the most benefit to sentient beings. And one choice that many people do make is the decision to practice vegetarianism or veganism. And of course, that's a wonderful choice. Some people do have health conditions which make that difficult or impractical or even impossible for them. But the vast majority of people can survive with perfect health on a vegetarian or vegan diet. So for most people, yes, I would say practicing vegetarianism or veganism is a wonderful way to embody the principles of compassion and consideration and thoughtfulness. And this monastery is a vegetarian monastery. It's one of our basic principles. We only serve vegetarian food here. And if you've chosen to take on veganism, then as it seems very likely, again, good for you. That's great. That's wonderful. That's good karma. If you're going around hating other people for not being vegan, that's bad karma. If you're cultivating a superiority complex on account of veganism, that's bad karma. If you're judging and condemning other people because they're not following the same diet that you are, that's bad karma. So be careful here. Veganism as a personal choice, good karma. Veganism as a basis for hating and condemning other people, bad karma. So watch out there. As for why not all Buddhist communities are vegan, well, there's many reasons for that. Keeping in mind that in the time of the Buddha, monks relied entirely on donated food. And there's actually a sutta where a monk asked the Buddha why he did not require vegetarianism for the monks. And what the Buddha said was that because it would make it too difficult for some of them. Some of them would be living in poor areas where the lay people are giving just what they have. And if the monks started rejecting certain kinds of food, then they wouldn't get enough to eat. And then the monastic life would be too difficult and they would have to disrobe. They wouldn't be able to keep it up. So the Buddha said that he did not require vegetarianism for monastics out of compassion for monastics. So that's an interesting reason. But even then he gave requirements that we cannot accept meat if we believe the animal was killed for our personal benefit. So again, though, these are rules for monastics. And the Buddha was also clear that if we do not suspect it was killed for us, then there is no harmful karma just in the act of receiving it. But again, he's talking about monks. He's not talking about lay people. He's not talking about people who buy things from the store. If you are in the position of buying things from the store, then yeah, of course you should make an effort to make purchasing choices that cause the least harm possible. And yeah, that does mean vegetarianism or veganism if your health can support it. And as for why some communities don't follow that, well, ask them. Ask them why they don't. They'll have their reasons. I can only speculate. Ask them why they don't. Again, this monastery is vegetarian. Not quite 100% vegan, 99% vegan. But it's true, not all monasteries are. So ask each one why they're not and see what they say. But try to be forgiving. Try to be understanding. Don't be too self-righteous and condemnatory, because then you're just making things worse for yourself. Okay?
And on Instagram, Osho says, how to overcome distraction.
Zen answer. Mindfulness. Sati sat pana, patana, satipatthana. Establish bright mindfulness, always and everywhere, in every posture.
In other words, you have to practice. No excellence can be acquired without constant practice. And Lawrence asks, recommend suttas for the dead and or ancestors. This Sunday is also Qingming Festival, Tomb Sweeping Day. Any of the venerables here?
Actually, the most important thing is just to do anything meritorious and dedicate it to your deceased relatives. So traditionally, one makes offerings to monastics or to Buddhist temples and dedicates the merit to your relatives. But actually, you can do anything meritorious. Chanting sutras is just one example. And actually, again, it's not actually such a big deal what sutta you're chanting. There's a lot of traditions around chanting certain sutras for the dead, but the traditions vary widely. So ultimately, you make your own decision on these matters. The important thing, once again, is that you're dedicating the merit to the deceased relatives.
Thank you. And Gita says, it's wonderful to see Bhante Sudhasana Yasoma on the YouTube live panel with Bhante Saranapala. Thank you for your participation. We look forward to seeing you. Yeah, we've been very honored to be invited by Bhante Saranapala. I'm actually always agitated when I'm on that panel because I'm so young. As in not in age, but in the monastic years. I'm probably older than some of the venerables there, but in worldly age. But I'm very young in monastic age, especially because a lot of them were also ordained when they were little children. So they've been in robes for 40, 50 years, like quite a long time. But yeah, it's great. Glad to hear you tune in for that as well. And Mary says, Dr. Boone is a true animal sentient being lover. He cured my doggy cat too. Oh, sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And Jessie says, thank you, Venerable. One other question, not in jest. How does a monk choose eyeglasses? Seems like the only choice of personal style. So how do you avoid vanity?
How do you avoid vanity?
Well, actually, everyone here at the monastery can.
Well, I have on Oakleys.
Except for me.
But I bought these before I was a monk.
Oh.
So to be fair. But to be honest, I probably wouldn't deny, of course. If someone says, can I buy you frames, Bhante? I would pick the Oakley Sadhu. I'm going to wear glasses a lot. So it's okay to have some things that are nice, but just don't be attached. That's all.
Yeah, so...
Not to be extreme.
Oh, sorry.
No.
Yeah, I would just personally, and I only get new glasses when I really need them. So it's usually once every several years. The current ones I'm wearing are actually a solid 6-7 years old now. But what I look for are frames that are simple, dignified, and functional. So I'm looking for the least flashy options. Simple, dignified, functional. That's it.
And they were donated by...
Yeah. Yeah, so these were a person who was coming to the monastery just one day said, do you need new glasses? I'll get you new glasses. So she took me and a couple other monks to the eyewear shop, and we got new glasses.
Great. Yeah. So
Is this the one who asked the question earlier about distraction? Is this another question?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so monastics are reliant entirely on the generosity of lay people. Hence, it's normally actually what the lay person offers in terms of glasses, and then you can pick with the options from the options.
And on Instagram Live, Way Out is In says, after I started doing daily sadhana, I've been feeling really good. But there is this longing within me to dedicate my entire life towards enlightenment. Do you have any advice on how to balance the two?
Don't balance it, just ordain. If you feel the vocation, go for it.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay.
And Kauser Friend says, despite your admonishment against guided meditation just now, I would like to thank you all for the guided meditations. They've been tremendously helpful to me, as have been the Dhamma talk. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. I'm so glad to hear. And John says, it is easier for greed types to experience sukha, samatha.
Is it? He's saying, is it easier?
I don't know. I'm a hate type. So.
You're the greed type here, so.
Well, I had difficulty up until recently with sukha of the body, so I don't know if that's true. I mean, now I can access that, but it's been 3 years-ish, which is still a beginner length of time. Devante Sudaso pointed out the other day, which is true. He's like, 3 years. Keep going. True beginner here. But maybe, I don't know. Perhaps, mayhaps, as my father would say. Mayhaps.
And Joy asks, I often hear Dhamma teachers say, just let go. It's not easy. And how do you really let go? Just let go. It's kind of like, relax. You can't go, relax, relax, relax. It doesn't work. You just have to relax. So yeah.
So I will add one bit to that, which is the cultivation of wisdom helps with letting go. So pay attention to how painful it is to cling and grasp at things. Pay attention to the discomfort that comes from trying to hold on to things which are impermanent and unsatisfying. And then you'll start letting go naturally.
Yeah. Make a fist and squeeze really hard and hold it and let go. It's very painful, not pleasant. Stress. You can approach situations like that easy, but we don't see it like that as it truly is.
Yeah, contemplating suffering, of course, contemplating dukkha, then is a great antidote for wanting to let go of the dukkha, and you see what the source is. As I like to say, there's like both the dukkha of not getting what you want, and then the dukkha of getting what you want. And these days, actually, we do get a lot of, not these days in the pandemic, perhaps, but, in our lives, we can see we've had good opportunities to rack up a lot of dissatisfaction. That's probably why you're here tuned in. So you probably wanted to have a great relationship and you had a great relationship, or a great job and you had a great job, and you had whatever kind of thing that you wanted. So look at the dissatisfaction and then you're like, maybe I don't really want this that much. So why should I hold on to this idea, actually, of getting a great job or getting a great relationship, getting a great thing? Let go. And then you're much happier.
And on Instagram, general question, what do you think about thoughts?
Think about thoughts.
They're natural, but often useless. That's it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't think about thoughts. Be aware of thoughts. Be the witnessing of thoughts.
And Mary says, do you all feel a bit reborn today after receiving your first vaccine? I have such a sense of relief and rebirth of myself after my vaccination. I plan to be more kind and giving for this gift. Oh, that's very sweet. Bante, do you feel reborn?
No.
How do you feel?
Well, I'm happy to be doing my part to help save people's health and lives. So after a year of watching helplessly as the situation got worse and worse, it's actually feels pretty good to know that all I had to do was just walk into a pharmacy and get poked in the arm, and just by doing that, I'm helping to save lives and bring health back to the world. So that was pretty lovely. Yeah.
And Gita asks, in our daily practice of mindfulness and awareness of every moment, as states of mind thoughts arise, we must train to observe and let go without going into either extreme of clinging or aversion.
It sounds, you got it. Good job. Sadhu, sadhu. Keep up the good work, the noble work.
And on Instagram, Miss Wellbeing says, the Buddha had given some advice for how lay people should treat their finances, like setting some money aside for savings, etc. What are some other practical advice that would be applicable in today's society?
I think she's asking the wrong people. Actually, I think that the sutra you're referring to is actually pretty great, because he talks about making sure your own needs are met, looking after your family, giving gifts to your local monks and priests, giving gifts to your friends. And setting some aside for the future, just in case there's unforeseen problems. Yeah, I think that sutta is actually pretty comprehensive. It kind of hits on all the major points. You read the suttas, the Buddha actually talks quite a bit about the proper use of wealth, the proper way to use money that one gets.
Great, thank you, Bantim. And Brian asks, good to see you, by the way, Brian, like virtually, your name. I see your face. I visualize your face. Before the Buddha's enlightenment, he separated his thoughts into the ones that lead to and away from Nibbana. If one is able to discern these thoughts, does that mean that one is in the right track? And should both types be let go of and just continue to focus on the breath, or are we to cultivate the good thoughts while in meditation?
There's a lot in there.
I just answered one. Somebody else take this one.
Yes. Well, the first part he answered correctly. You're on the right track. If you see the wholesome thoughts as wholesome thoughts and unwholesome. And how do you know that? Because how they affect you and others. Do they give rise to other wholesome attitudes in your mind stream? So you answered that first part. And what was the second part of that?
Should both types be let go of and just continue to focus on the breath, or are we to cultivate the good thoughts while in meditation?
I would say the advanced practice is definitely just to let go of all thinking. But you do want to generate compassion, which may require thinking at times, but not always, because as we did in the guided meditation a few days ago, you can cultivate that feeling and drop the thinking and just bask in that unconditional metta, that goodwill, that loving kindness, friendliness, that feeling independent of thinking. Likewise, the breath is not necessary, because many people don't use mindfulness of breathing and they still get into samadhi and jhanas and so on.
Okay. And CH asks, if a person who lives in seclusion from the rest of the world were to advance along the path, could this somehow benefit others as well? Is there a psychic connection shared by all sentient beings?
Yes and yes. Yes. Yes, yes, yes.
That's it.
Well, I mean, I guess I could go into more detail, but there's not really any point. The answer is yes.
All right.
For science, Rupert Sheldrake has an idea of what's called morphogenic resonance or something like that. He has this novel scientific idea that once one person does something, then it becomes easier for other persons or beings to do it. Just look up Rupert Sheldrake. He's a British scientist.
I mean, in terms of, oh, go ahead. No. It's, what you do affects the entire universe. So if you cultivate goodness, if you cultivate the path towards awakening, then that affects the entire universe and all the beings in it.
And on Instagram, the person who asked about thoughts before, can you explain in more detail why thought is useless?
I said it's sometimes useless. And look at your thoughts. Ask yourself, how often are my thoughts leading towards enlightenment, and how often are they just useless? So start watching your thoughts and take note. What percentage of your thoughts are actually wonderful, useful, wholesome thoughts leaning towards enlightenment, and what percentage is useless? And you're going to find that 99% or more of your thoughts are in the useless category. In fact, I just had a few useless thoughts just while telling this to you. And
that's pretty good.
as you cultivate awareness of your own mind, it actually becomes comical. Just how much like utterly silly, stupid, pointless, useless stuff floats through the mind all the time. The mind is kind of like a polluted river. There's just trash just floating through it all the time. Don't get caught up in the trash. Okay, that's it.
And Robin asks, I have some long-term back pain, which is usually manageable, but is a source of worry and makes it difficult to do certain things, including more than short periods of meditation. An experienced lay practitioner once told me that pain like that can be an asset in practice if it's used wisely. Do you agree? How do I do that? Yes, I agree. And how do you do that? By paying attention to it. So normally in meditation practice, when we're struggling, it's because it's difficult to, like the most often than not, if we're struggling, it's because we are not cultivating an interest in the object of concentration. Right? So we start planning and thinking, getting all wrapped up with all the useless thoughts and, that bunch of garbage that Bhante was talking about. But if you have a consistent sort of chronic pain, that's actually a blessing in disguise because it's always there. So strong, potent feeling, your mind naturally gravitates towards it instead of going towards it and hating it and going, I hate this, I don't want this, I wish they could stop, if only I didn't have this incredible pain, my meditation would be awesome. No, it wouldn't. It would not be awesome. It would actually be horrible. But if you just look at it and really understand pain, take it as an opportunity, watch it. Look, experience it. What does it feel like? Where is it? I'll give you a little preview. Normally we think that pain is located in one particular single part of the body. But that's because we create an image of what pain is and we start believing it. It's a form of delusion. When you actually look at it, you start noticing that what you think is, say, for example, actually right now, if I look at there's a bit of soreness after the vaccine here on my arm. So if I look at the pain with delusion, I just think that the pain is here. But actually, if I look at it, well, there's a tingling sensation. And it's constantly appearing and disappearing, appearing, disappearing. And it's in all sorts of different parts here in the avambraccio. How do you call this thing?
Upper arm.
Upper arm, thank you.
Bicep.
Yeah, the upper arm. And actually, this is just a superficial analysis of the pain. If I were to have a meditation practice, actually, I'm really looking forward to meditating after this. So I'm talking about it will be really fascinating, because you can start seeing how the experience is constantly changing and it's unpredictable. And it's there. So nurture an interest, be curious. Go with it with a mind of like, now I'm going to really understand what pain is like. Then you'll see that actually when you don't have pain, sometimes you're going to look for it. You know, there's going to be like, oh, where is it coming? Wait, where is it gone? Can it come back? It was so interesting to watch it. Remember a retreat last year at a certain point, I was waiting. I was like analyzing the pain that comes in, you know, with just plain sitting meditation. But because I was doing these long sits, it's like after an hour and a half, I was like, wait, why is this pain not coming? It's way too peaceful. Right? It becomes like your best friend in a way. It's very interesting. And there's actually quite a few questions.
We might need to go a bit more quickly.
And thank you, Melinda and Linda, for your kind words. Dean says, also very glad to hear that Amplicloud is pro-vegan. When I see meat on a plate, I see a dead animal, not food. It saddens me. Yes, that's actually how the Buddha encourages us to look at meat. As it actually is. It's a dead body. And Brian says, in what order do you recommend reading the suttas? I started and believe I finished the Majjhima Nikaya. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. I continue to read it though, but it's the only one I've read. Yeah, that's great. Then go to, well, I would say Samyutta Nikaya and then Anguttara Nikaya. And M says, is Shikantaza that teaches Dogen or silent illumination similar teaching from Chan masters? Does it have any validity for Vipassana as taught in Theravada? Thank you. Well, this is Bhante Sudasa's favorite topic, so yes. I'll pass it on to him.
Yes, absolutely, yes. So in the suttas, the Buddha talks in a few places about animitta samadhi, which means objectless concentration. So that's meditation where one is not focused on any particular object, which is one of the ways that Shikantaza or silent illumination is spoken about. He also talks about apanahita samadhi, which means undirected concentration. So meditation where you're not doing anything in particular with the mind, which again is a way that Shikantaza is spoken about. And of course, he also talks about sunyata samadhi. So meditation focused on emptiness, which is fundamentally what silent illumination practice is. So yeah, I mean, the Chan masters were not inventing anything new. They were just turning the wheel. They were just talking about the same things the Buddha talked about. They just spoke about it from new directions and new angles, but they were talking about the same things the Buddha spoke about. Yeah, so this is still part of Buddhist practice fundamentally. In Theravada terms, we would call these practices Yuganada practice, so simultaneous samatha and vipassana. So it is in fact a form of vipassana. However, it is a very advanced form of vipassana, a very difficult form of vipassana meditation. So I usually recommend that you practice object-based directed practices first. And after you have some skill with object-based meditations, then you can try using objectless meditations.
Great, thank you, Bhante. And Ray asks, why are you not vegan? If 99% is clearly not needed, when everything is available to us, why would you support the suffering of others and suffer the karma? 2021, not 5,000 years ago. Well, to be clear, so we actually do not have everything available to us. As a matter of fact, we have nothing available to us because we're monastics. So when we take vows, we take vows of poverty. So we rely entirely on generosity. So actually, the monastery is vegetarian, and we're alms mendicants. So if you want to offer 100% vegan food to the monastic Sangha, we'll gladly appreciate it. So you can make good karma. And Kam says, hi, Venerables. A Zen teacher said in an online class about being curious with the mind, seeing the mind with curiosity. How does this help with deepening samadhi?
Well, that's a factor of awakening, the second one. Dhamma vichara, investigation, experimentation, vichara, which is how Ajahn Panisaro translate that, because of experimentation related to investigation, and it's a crucial practice. Or as one monk told me in the temple where I ordained, he said, just watch the mind. He always smiling, just watch the mind, just watch it. Meaning be curious about the mind, watch it. Back to what I said earlier, the witnessing awareness that doesn't require thought. Get familiar with that. We've gotten away from that as adults with the verbalization, with the mental commentary, the papancha, the proliferation, the expansion of more thinking and thought forms. Get back to that pristine awareness that just knows, that's cognizant, that's lucid. That ties into your question. That's the key. Getting into that, abiding in that space, that clarity.
And on Instagram, just a comment, but Mex says, I'm a Buddhist living in Tanzania. We have a temple here.
Great.
So happy to see you all seeking the ultimate path.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Excellent.
Well, now we have a reason to go to Tanzania.
Yes.
Yeah. Great. And Angela says, do you think the unified consciousness reached through enlightenment could be what scientists have studied as dark matter? Sorry if it's a weird question, could totally be useless.
Well, first off, I would not reduce enlightenment to calling it reaching unified consciousness. So the Buddha does talk about having experiences of unified consciousness, but he refers to them as just being states of concentration, not states of wisdom. They're just an altered state of perception, but they're not the fundamental nature of reality. So it's possible to have experiences of unified consciousness, yet not be one step closer to enlightenment. So I wouldn't reduce it to that. As to what dark matter is, well, I'm not a scientist and I don't know what it is. And the truth is, last I checked, astrophysicists also don't know what it is. So that persists as being a mystery. So I could only speculate, and I'm not going to speculate.
And Kumu says, Aya and Bantes, glad you got the shots. I got the second yesterday and I had high fever all of today. Keep Tylenol handy for the second shot. We'll keep that in mind. Thank you, Kumu, and please take care of yourself. I've heard that the second shot, apparently a lot of people, we got this feedback today, that we'll keep the Tylenol, hopefully. Goes by. I think we have. It was kindly donated a while back, so we should be stocked. And Geeta says, absolutely wonderful to hear all the Venerables are vaccinated with the first dose when you all enjoy longevity and great health, and you as well. Thank you. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And Original Mind says, Siddhartha taught that there are two aspects to the training path, tranquility of awareness and insight into fabrications, and that when these two aspects come to maturity, unbinding occurs, tranquility equals silent illumination, mokusho zen. Insight into fabrication, Kanna Zen equals Koan Zen, Koan plus meditation, instant tranquility. And
I must say, while I agree with you that koan practice is a form of insight meditation, I definitely agree with you on that. I do not agree with reducing silent illumination practice to just being tranquility practice. It's not. As I said earlier, silent illumination is simultaneous samadhi and vipassana. It is not just samadhi practice.
And he says the writings of Dogen that focus on Dharma were written to non-returners who are already mastered samadhi.
Maybe so. I don't know. Anyway, that seems to be the last question here. Anything there?
No, just a comment from Mex who says our Bodhi tree is one of the biggest in Africa.
Ooh,
Wow.
how rad! Great. Can you send us a picture on the Instagram? We would love
this. Yes.
Yeah, we would love to see it. That would be great. And Kam also confirms that he got sick after the second shot.
Oh.
All right, we'll keep it in mind. We won't schedule anything after the second shot.
I was lucky.
And it looks like that is all for this evening. It doesn't seem like there are any other questions popping, but maybe the live audience at the monastery has questions, perhaps.
I would really enjoy a silent illumination meditation, guided meditation in one of our upcoming times together.
Great. Yeah. There was a silent illumination guided meditation request, so I think maybe next week when Bhante will be sharing Dhamma again.
It might happen.
Might happen. Surprise. All right, great. So that's all for this evening, and we can end with 3 sadhus. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May you all be happy and peaceful, and may all good things come to you. We'll meet again next week, every Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, 8 a.m. and 7:30 p.m. New York City time. And remember, every Friday evening we have monk chat.